Pacific Ocean right now, approximately 9 days from the port of Long Beach, is a steel box, 8 feet wide, 8 feet tall, 40 feet long, packed with consumer electronics that will arrive at a Walmart distribution center within the next 3 weeks. That box cost approximately $6,000 to manufacture when it was built in China 7 years ago. And the shipping company whose vessel it is sitting on, one of 10 companies that between them control 85% of all container shipping capacity on Earth, is charging approximately $12,000 to move that single box from Shanghai to Los Angeles in 14 days of ocean transit and at the peak of the COVID supply chain crisis in October 2021. That exact same box, that same ocean, that same 14-day voyage cost $25,000 to move one steel container, a 1,000% increase from the pre-COVID rate of approximately $2,000, and the economics of why that price went from $2,000 to $25,000 and back, of why a metal box generates more revenue per trip than most small businesses generate per month, and of why the entire world economy depends on 10 companies getting the pricing of that box right. Are the economics I'm going to decode today the container that changed global commerce? Here's the economic innovation that made modern globalization possible, and that most people who have ever bought a product from another country have never thought about clearly. Before 1956, ocean cargo was loaded as individual pieces, called break bulk shipping. Longshoremen loaded individual items, crates, barrels, bags, one at a time onto ships, and unloaded them one at a time at the destination. A process so labor-intensive and time-consuming that shipping costs made many forms of global trade economically prohibitive. Malcolm McLean, a trucking entrepreneur from North Carolina, invented the standardized shipping container in 1956, a steel box that could be loaded at a factory, sealed, and moved without opening from origin to destination by truck, rail, and ship, all using the same box, and the economic effect of this innovation in reducing the cost of loading and unloading cargo by approximately 97% was the single most important enabling factor in the globalization of manufacturing that defined the global economy of the last 60 years. The container made it economically rational to manufacture in Asia and sell in America, because the shipping cost of doing so, once containerization made it efficient, was lower than the labor cost advantage of manufacturing in a lower wage country. Every Apple iPhone, every IKEA bookshelf, every piece of clothing made in Bangladesh, every piece of furniture made in Vietnam is the economic consequence of Malcolm McLean's steel box, the freight rate volatility that defines a business. Here's the economic characteristic of ocean shipping that makes it simultaneously one of the highest return and one of the highest risk businesses in global commerce. Freight rate volatility, the price that a shipper pays to move a container from Shanghai to Los Angeles, fluctuates with supply and demand across a range that has no equivalent in any other logistics industry. In 2019, the Trans-Pacific container freight rate from Shanghai to Los Angeles for a standard 40-foot container was approximately $2,000 to $2,500. In October 2021, the same container on the same route cost between $20,000 and $25,000, a 1,000% increase in approximately 18 months. Driven by the simultaneous surge in consumer goods demand as COVID stimulus payments reached Americans who could not spend on services, and the disruption of shipping schedules that made vessel capacity temporarily unavailable at the volumes required. And the shipping companies that owned vessels during that period, Maersk, MSC, CMACGM, Hapag-Lloyd, generated combined profits in 2021 and 2022 of approximately $150 billion. More than the combined profits of the airline industry in the previous 20 years, from moving metal boxes across the ocean, the fuel economics that determine everything. Here is the cost that dominates every voyage calculation and that makes ocean shipping one of the most energy-intensive industries in global commerce. Bunker fuel, the heavy oil burned by large commercial vessels, is the single largest cost in operating a container ship. A modern ultra-large container vessel, the kind that carries 22 to 24,000 containers on a single voyage, burns approximately 250 to 300 tons of fuel oil per day at operational speed, at current bunker fuel prices of approximately $650 per ton. That is between $160,000 and $195,000 per day in fuel alone on a 30-day Trans-Pacific round voyage. The fuel bill for one ship on one round trip runs between $4.8 million and $5.8 million. before the port fees are paid, before the crew is compensated, before the financing cost of the vessel is serviced. And this fuel cost dominance, fuel typically representing 50 to 70% of total voyage operating costs, is why the decision by shipping companies to slow steam, deliberately reducing ship speed from the optimal of 25 knots to 18 to 20 knots, saves approximately 15 to 20% of fuel consumption per voyage, at the cost of adding 3 to 5 days to voyage time, and why the Iran war and Red Sea disruption of 2025 and 2026, which has forced ships to reroute around the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa, adding 10 to 14 days and $1 to $2 million in fuel per round voyage, has caused freight rates to spike 50 to 100% above their pre-disruption levels. The empty container problem that nobody solves. Here is the structural economic challenge of container shipping that has existed since McLean's steel box was invented, and that generates billions of dollars in repositioning costs that shippers pass on to importers and ultimately to consumers. The global trade imbalance between Asia and North America, where Asia exports dramatically more manufactured goods to America than America exports in container volume to Asia, means that after every voyage from Shanghai to Los Angeles, the container ship arrives in California with 20,000 full containers and departs for Asia with a much smaller number of full containers and a large number of empty boxes that must be repositioned to Asia for the next outbound load. An empty container being shipped back to Asia generates zero freight revenue while consuming fuel, port handling fees, and the financing cost of the container itself. And the average container spends approximately 56 days per year sitting empty somewhere in the world, in a port, at a depot, or on a ship, generating cost rather than revenue. And the total annual cost of empty container repositioning across the global container shipping industry is estimated at approximately $15 to $20 billion, which is embedded in every freight rate, and ultimately in every price of every imported product. The alliance system that created the oligopoly, here is the competitive structure of ocean shipping that most cargo shippers deal with daily, but that most consumers have never thought about. 10 companies control approximately 85% of all container shipping capacity on Earth. And those 10 companies have organized themselves into 3 shipping alliances, where member carriers share space on each other's vessels, coordinate schedules and routes, and collectively offer broader coverage than any individual carrier could provide independently. The 3 major alliances: 2M, which pairs Maersk and MSC, the Ocean Alliance grouping, CMAC, GM, and COSCO, and the alliance connecting Hapag-Lloyd with several Asian carriers. Between them, deploy the vast majority of container capacity on the major trade lanes connecting Asia to North America and Europe. And the economic consequence of this alliance structure, which regulators in the European Union and the United States have periodically scrutinized, is that price competition between carriers on the major routes is significantly less vigorous than in industries with more dispersed competitive structures. When freight rates spike, as they did in 2021, the alliances limit the ability of shippers to find alternative capacity at better rates, because the alliances control most of the alternative capacity themselves. And when rates fall, as they did in 2023 and 2024, when COVID-era ordering of new vessels flooded the market with additional capacity, the carriers work collectively to manage deployment and avoid the most destructive price collapses. The Red Sea economics that connect to your world. Here is where the economics of ocean shipping in 2026 connect directly to the geopolitical events that your viewers are following in every other video. Since late 2023 and continuing through 2026, Houthi forces in Yemen have attacked commercial vessels transiting the Red Sea and Bab el-Mandeb Strait, the narrow waterway that separates the Arabian Peninsula from East Africa and through which approximately 15% of global maritime trade normally passes on its way through the Suez Canal between Asia and Europe. The economic consequence of those attacks, which have made many commercial operators unwilling to transit the Red Sea without naval escort, is that container ships that previously sailed from Singapore to Rotterdam in approximately 20 days via Suez Canal are now routing around the Cape of Good Hope, adding 10 to 14 days and $1 to $2 million in fuel cost per round voyage. And the total additional cost of this disruption, additional fuel, vessel time value, additional insurance war risk premiums, additional port handling at alternative ports, has been estimated at between $5 and $10 billion per month of disruption, which is flowing directly into freight rates and ultimately into the prices that every American pays for goods that traveled through the affected trade lanes. Here is the honest economic truth about ocean shipping. 90% of everything you own has at some point in its journey from factory to your hands sat inside a steel box on a vessel burning $200,000 of fuel per day across an ocean that does not care about delivery schedules or retail pricing expectations, and the 10 companies that operate those vessels, and set the freight rates that determine how much of that journey cost is embedded in the price of every product you buy, have collectively earned more money in the last 5 years than in the previous 30, from a business that most of their customers have never thought about and could not easily replace even if they tried. Jake unboxes his new electronics purchase, and for the first time, thinks about the 14 days it spent in a steel box on the Pacific Ocean, and the $12,000 someone paid to put it there, and how that $12,000 divided by the dozens of items sharing the same container becomes a few cents of shipping cost embedded invisibly in the price of the product he just bought, and understands that the most important infrastructure in global commerce is not a fiber optic cable, not a satellite, not a data center. It is a painted steel box, and the economics of getting it from one side of the world to the other. You have been decoded. If this video made you think about every product you own differently, and about the invisible economic infrastructure that makes global trade possible, subscribe to Money Decoder 3004. Every single day, we decode the economics of the global systems that shape every American's financial life. Simply, honestly, and clearly, drop a comment below. Did you know that 10 companies control 85% of ocean shipping, and that the COVID container rate went from $2,000 to $25,000? Tell me what surprised you most. I read every single comment, and I will see you in the next decode.